Go ahead and call this meeting to order of the April 8th, 9 a.m. meeting of the Placer County Board of Supervisors. We'll start this meeting with our flag salute with our Vice Chairman, Supervisor Kurt Buell.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor Euler, and we will like to welcome everybody to our meeting, and we will start again with our statement of meeting procedures read by our clerk, Ann Holman.
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, April 8th, 2014. Agendas are available on the wall outside this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there is a person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself as such, and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. If you are hearing impaired, we have listening devices available. It is requested that all cell phones be turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
Thank you, Ann. We will now move on to our point in the meeting here where we allow the public to voice their opinion, ask questions, so on and so forth. So if there's any member of the public that would like to make comments, make a statement that is not on the agenda today, please do. Yes, you may. And if you would give us your name and your address. And
Richard Anderson, 068 Oro Valley Road, Auburn, 95602. Good morning. I'm addressing you this morning in my capacity as president of the Auburn Airport Business Park Association. As president of the Business Association, I have over the past 2 months received a flurry of communications concerning the increasing crime rate within our community at the airport. These crimes include trespassing, attempted break-ins, theft, vandalism, destruction of private property, and a bullet hole in one of our members' office windows. A number of our members have also expressed dissatisfaction in their perception of how law enforcement has responded to their concerns. The prevalence of that point of view, whether correct or not, has manifested itself as apathy on the part of some and has led to a decline in the reporting of criminal acts to law enforcement. In response to these communications, I have conducted an investigation of my own. The observations that I have arrived at, based on my personal investigation, are as follows. 1, the homeless population as a whole is not the cause of these issues. Rather, there is a subset of that population who are engaging in criminal activity and who are blatantly abusing the community. 2, the nature of the reported crimes, theft of large amounts of scrap metals and automotive fuels, indicates that there is also an outside criminal element involved. 3, the condition of the homeless encampments are, if nothing else, a serious health concern. Based on the above findings, the airport business community is requesting the following of the Board of Supervisors. 1, we have previously asked the Auburn City Council to form an investigative committee whose purpose will be to ascertain the root causes of the airport crime issues. As the airport business park spans both city and county areas, we ask the Board of Supervisors to provide active assistance to the Auburn City Council in this matter. 2, we ask the Board of Supervisors request of the Placer County Sheriff to have a more active and more highly visible presence within the business park during those times of day or night when crimes are most likely to occur. The Business Association has scheduled a meeting of our membership and other community members who have an interest in the business park. The meeting will take place on Wednesday, April 23rd at 5:30 p.m. within the main airport building. The purpose of that meeting will to forge lines of communication between the businesses, social service organizations, and law enforcement as concerns these matters. We ask the Board of Supervisors to have representation as well. Thank you.
Great. Sir, and I'll just go ahead and briefly comment. As you may or may not be aware, we're not permitted as a board, because this is an unagendized item, to take your concerns up and provide, instruction or direction for ourselves. But I think this is one of those serious types of situations where we can just at least provide staff to communicate with you concerning your concerns.
And Chairman Duran, just informationally, Deputy Zender and I will both be attending the meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Going once, twice, three times? Thank you so much. We're going to move on now to our supervisor committee reports. Are there any supervisor committee reports? Mr. Holmes?
Yeah.
Supervisor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a report. I just wanted to recognize the fact that our chambers are have a darker hue. You may not have noticed, but I was here a week ago Saturday and saw two workmen diligently cleaning this. They took Saturday off, or they took Saturday to come in and take care of this. It was Mike Rigney and Tucker Kelly. They did a great job. I came in and actually they were sitting down, and I said, "What's the deal? How come you guys aren't working?" Well, they just had finished. And anyhow, I just wanted to recognize them, and it's appropriate that we have so many members of the facility staff here today that I could say that. So anyhow, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor. We're a couple of minutes before our first item.
Chairman Duran,
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's, again, not a supervisor report, but did want to take the opportunity to announce the rededication renewal ceremony for the Auburn Forest Hill Bridge, Wednesday, April 16th, beginning at 9:30 a.m. This will actually be an opportunity for folks to tour the improvements to the bridge and actually get out under the bridge and do some tours there. No small children, a little bit too much of an opportunity there. But that will begin at 10 o'clock and run until about noon. The public tour section will run from 11:15 to 11:45. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor. At this time, we're going to go ahead and move to our consent agenda, and these are items that our administrative staff has recommended for approval, and all items here were going to be approved by a single roll call vote. So that being said, I'll bring this to the board. Is there anything on the consent agenda that any board member would like removed from? Okay, great. Great. Oh, I was going to ask the public, is there anyone from the public that would like to remove an item from discussion? Okay, seeing none. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Wygant? Holmes? Euler? Duran?
Yes. Great. Now that does move us into our 9:10 item, and this is a commendation recognizing Jim Durfee for 28 years of dedicated service to the County of Placer and the citizens of Placer County. So if Mr. Durfee, would you please stand up and come to the podium here? All right, and this really is an honor for me. I'm many of you probably already know I'm the youngest tenured supervisor on the board here, and I know Jim has had a rich and long history with the county. A couple of things that just in my own personal workings with Jim, I found him to be very knowledgeable, a very innovative mind, and one of the things that I think impressed me the most when I first started working with Jim is how he started here at the county, and he wasn't always the director of facility services. He actually started, and Jim will tell you how he started, but he was with maintenance here. Is that correct, Jim?
I started in actually what's now the Parks Division as a groundskeeper.
Yeah, as a groundskeeper. So, that to me, is I think is a tremendous ability to stick with an employer and move through and rise, at different levels and take advantage of those opportunities that present themselves. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and read this commendation. April 8, 2014, the matter of the commendation recognizing Jim Durfee for 28 years of dedicated public service to Placer County and its citizens. Whereas Jim Durfee, a fourth-generation resident of Placer County, provided 28 years of exemplary service to the county and its citizens through his positions with the Department of Facility Services and the County Executive Office. And whereas Jim Durfee served over 27 years with the Department of Facility Services, having the unique distinction of working in all but one of the department divisions. Jim began his career in the Parks Division, then moving to building maintenance, capital improvements, property management, solid waste, and ultimately in administration as the department director. Whereas, due to his vast experience, Jim led the department with great vision and purpose. Jim loved mentoring staff and watching their growth and development. Jim established lasting relationships with coworkers, agencies, and community constituents. Whereas Jim was instrumental in many of the county's most noteworthy projects, including numerous hazardous material abatement projects, the Comprehensive Facilities Master Plan, multiple regional sewer projects, and provided leadership for the development projects such as the Eastern Regional Landfill Closure, the Community Redevelopment Resource Center, Auburn Justice Center, Bill Santucci Justice Center, the Children's Emergency Shelter, South Placer Adult Correctional Facility, Colfax Library renovation, and the Rockland Library, among others. The list goes on and on. It's tremendous accomplishments here. Whereas Jim served the Western Placer Waste Management Authority for more than 16 years, serving 8 years as its executive director, leaving a legacy of excellent management leadership which will endure for decades to come. And whereas Jim completed his career in the county executive offices as director of special projects, taking advantage of his keen political acumen. Whereas Jim is an active member of his community, Jim works with the nonprofits and children's organizations in his free time, and his broad and diverse interests including hunting, cowboy poetry, I didn't know that, auto racing, music, literature, quad runners, traveling, hiking, and golf. Jim is a wonderful father and is married to his high school sweetheart, Peggy. Now, therefore, let it be known that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Placer, on behalf of the citizens of Placer County, with great appreciation, acknowledges the exceptional service of Jim Durfee and wishes both he and his wife, Peggy, a fulfilling retirement and great success with their future endeavors. Great. And you're also a Marine veteran, correct? Hoorah. Here you go. It's your
Thank you,
turn.
Jack. I'm speechless. No.
That's a first.
No, it's not. It's an honor to be here this morning, and first I have to thank your board, all the previous boards I worked with. I think the first time I stood at this microphone was in 1990. So I spent a lot of time in this room, and I have to tell you what an honor it is to have been a part of government, be a part of the process, and to serve the people of Placer County. And I have to get a message out there to go into government service. Public service is honorable, it's rewarding, there's vast opportunity there. And it might not always be really popular, but it's always worth it. So I'd give that piece of advice. The county's a great employer, and I thank everybody for the opportunities I had. Thank you for trusting me with the best department. That was a lot of fun. I do have a few people to thank. First, I have to thank Peggy, my partner. therapist, best friend, a lot of late dinners. These jobs do take a lot of time, and a lot of phone calls at odd hours, weekends, interrupted vacations, and she always had just a smile on her face and lots of support. Very positive. Thank you, Beck. The CEOs I worked for, Mr. Bosch, Dave, thanks for the opportunity. Didn't get to work with you for but a little over a year, but it was really great. Thank you. Don Lunsford, Jan Christofferson, Tom Miller, all you choose great leaders, and it shows throughout the organization. The other department heads, again, that leadership that you choose, it was an honor to work with those people. When I hear all these stories from other agencies about backstabbing and infighting and so forth, and it is not very prevalent here at all. You don't get very much of that. The department heads pull together. We went through some bad budget years the last few years, and everybody worked together to get that done. In emergencies, I used to just sit in my office with the cell phone, and the different department heads and I could just talk real quickly and get things going. That was just really, really a pleasure to work with the other department heads. I had mentors throughout my career, and the resolution says something about mentoring, and I can't describe how important that is. The mentors that I had, and in particular a couple of them, Darrell Ford, Gloria Coots, John Marin, who hired me, made one great decision in his career. Larry Otto, Dave Babbitts, Don Lunsford, Tony LaBeouf, and Tom Miller. All of that mentoring is really how we learn how to do what we do. You go to school, you observe, but it's the folks that take the time to tell you what you did, sometimes to, more importantly, tell you what you did wrong, help you out with that. That's really important, and I encourage everybody to continue to be mentors. It's the most important thing you can do, and it's really the lasting thing that you can do, and it's really rewarding, both individually and collectively. I have to thank my executive team at facilities, Albert Ritchie, Joel Swift, Bill Zimmerman, Mark Rideout, Will Dickinson, Valerie Bain, and my partner and buddy for about 20 years, Mary Dietrich. Just the very best. I'd match that team against anybody, anytime. Judy Sage, great secretary. Kathy Zick, I saw her back there somewhere. Our secretaries don't get anywhere near enough credit. You're always where you're supposed to be with the stuff you're supposed to have, and it's because of them. It wasn't because of anything I could do. And mostly the staff at Facility Services. I appreciated that, Jim. That was really nice of you to talk about Mary's staff. Those folks are out doing the good work all day, every day. They don't get enough credit for it. And any success that I had was really stuff that they did. So I can't ever express to them how grateful I am. Thank you very much. It's a party on the 24th, and retirement is everything it's cracked up to be. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. I think you've got a couple of folks that may want to.
Jim, I just wanted to thank you for your kind of mentoring me when I first came on board. I came on at a great time because all these buildings were being planned, and then I got to be there at the dedication of them. But the buildings notwithstanding, the two things that will always stand out for me is Hidden Falls Regional Park, and I can't not say enough how much I appreciate what you did for the Americans of Japanese descent that fought in the 442nd. That monument down there is a memorial that we can't forget the sacrifice that those people did. And I know that was a labor of love for you, and I just appreciated what you did to get that accomplished.
That came around at the right time for me, too. It came around at a time where I had a little juice and I could get some things done. And it was a labor of love, and I go down there often. Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you all very much.
Jack?
Yes. Oh, Supervisor Euler?
I think Robert.
Oh, okay. Robert, next. Go ahead.
So, Jim, I think about your career, and I think about 8 novels we could probably write, going way back to when Kirk and I first served together, but the Facility Services Master Plan, and as I recall, an hour-long perfect presentation that you guys studied for who knows how many hours before you delivered it, and it was just perfectly set in play and well orchestrated. But 5 years of lawsuits out of the landfill. My favorite, regional wastewater, of course. But the open space that we started and the amazing work that we did to get into a whole new line of business at the county that's been remarkably successful, and always love to give you credit and compliments, and Mary now for the condition of Hidden Falls Park and the huge number of people that enjoy it. But I think your career speaks for itself, and how you started at grounds in parks and rose to a very impressive position and made a great contribution over your 28 years, and it's been a great pleasure working with you, both when we agreed and disagreed, but always caused me to think harder and longer, and we did some great things, and your impact on the county will be lasting for many years to come. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Robert.
And condolences to Peggy, by the way.
Oh, we're easing into that.
Supervisor Euler.
I will be out of town the evening of your retirement dinner, and he's already volunteering to have my drink that you're going to buy me. This is normally the forum where we say all kinds of nice things about you, and the dinners where we get our shots in. Since I'm not going to be at the dinner, Jim is a poker player, an avid poker player, and a good poker player. And I'm not. And unfortunately, a lot of elected officials aren't. We tend to react to things that we hear, and you might see that from me from time to time, on rare occasion, where I'll react to something. But Jim has a wonderful ability to translate his poker skills into his job. Jim is one of the best people I've ever seen at keeping a straight face when hearing some of the most ridiculous things proposed, and not reacting in a way that I would, which is, "Are you kidding?" And not only keeping his real thoughts hidden, but then very deftly, very masterfully, helping you to perhaps understand the folly of your thinking that might have originated that thought. And always coming back with, well, here might be a way to look at this, and kind of gently then steering you down a path that leads you to perhaps a more sane and sober conclusion than you might have first proposed. And Jim had the opportunity to do that with me when I was 25 years old, having first been elected. And I had some opinions back then, didn't I?
You did.
But over the years, few of our department heads did a better job of internalizing and understanding the political nature of our jobs, and then helping us through good advice, through good counsel, again, some sober thought, in helping us plan out what might be a good response or approach to whatever the problem of the day might be, regardless of our perhaps passionate first action or reaction toward a problem. And so I will always be impressed by the way that you mentored us in some respects as members of the board in helping us to achieve what the desired end result was, but in a way that reflected well upon ourselves and the county when perhaps our first initial reaction might not have. So I want to thank you for the number of times you kind of held my hand and walked me through that little scenario, and didn't mock me as you rightly should have on several occasions from some of my reactions. When we see people retiring after a career, and Supervisor Holmes mentioned some of the accomplishments, the monuments, those things, we look to what were those accomplishments. And I think by far the greatest accomplishment, the best legacy that you have left for this county is the team that you assembled. It's very difficult, and it shows tremendous character and tremendous strength of character for a man to put himself in a position that his departure isn't felt. Everybody wants to be missed. Everybody wants to feel like, when I step away, boy, they'll realize just how. You set about your retirement by putting together a team that provided a seamless transition, has continued to provide the excellent guidance and counsel to our board that you did, and your legacy will live long after you because of the team that you helped put together. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. I'll let you in on a secret. That had nothing to do with making it easy on you guys. It made it easy on me the last couple of years. The easiest thing in the world is to let good people go do what they do.
Great. One more, Jim. Supervisor Montgomery.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'm really glad to hear you're enjoying your retirement. I kind of knew you would, just based on some conversations we had. As I read over the language of the document that Supervisor Duran read, I had to smile at the sentence, Jim completed his career in the county executive office as director of special projects, taking advantage of his keen political acumen. I loved that because that one sentence actually spoke volumes about why you were so effective in your tenure at the county. When I first met Jim, when I first came on board, we sat down and did a little bit of the meet and greet, and he said, but I want you to know that, I just do what you tell me. And I was like, well, that's cool. I didn't know I got a magic wand that came with this job. But, all joking aside, I think one of the things that Jim was so adept at was figuring out how to get to the answer the board was looking for. And as Robert said, that wasn't always easy. It wasn't always a simple process, but I think it was a process that worked ultimately. And I want to express my thanks for your finesse in dealing with us as a board, in dealing with the public. But I mainly want to take the opportunity to thank you for all your work for the public, because when I think about many of the projects that you spearheaded, so many library renovations, parks. I mean, people are so passionate about their parks and how much time and effort and money, probably above and beyond what we had in our budget, to maintain our county parks. That's what I really hear from people. I mean, the county buildings are great. We love them. But what the community is so indebted to you and your staff for is those community assets, the parks, the libraries, the 442nd Monument, Hidden Falls. And without your leadership, I don't think we would have done nearly as much with the assets we had, particularly in the years of the downturn. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Well, thank you all very, very much. It's a great ride.
Thank you. We are now going to move on to our 9:15 a.m. Item, and this is a proclamation naming May 6, 2014, the Big Day of Giving, and this is our Vice Chairman, Supervisor Kirk-Buehler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we have some folks from the Placer Community Foundation here, so if you'll go ahead and step on up, we'll move forward with this. I'm not going to get lost in all the whereases. I'm just going to get to the to kind of the what for here. I was approached a couple of months ago. Actually, gosh, I guess going on a year or so ago, you've been working on this project with the idea that while we have so many different good local nonprofits working diligently to address many of the problems that that face us here in Placer County and furthermore as a region, we very seldomly see a coordinated effort to drive philanthropy throughout our nonprofit community. And wouldn't it be great if we could mobilize, marshal the resources that you'll hear each organization trying to capture as many ears and eyes as they can through their limited resources in their advertising or their online giving requests, the occasional public service announcements, those things. You hear them spread out far and wide, but wouldn't it be great if we could really just concentrate all of that firepower on one day to drive the public's attention and participation in a day of giving to support our local nonprofits that do so much to support us here in our community. And so out of that, the Placer Community Foundation decided to participate in what is a national day of giving by working with partnering organizations in Sacramento, Yolo, and El Dorado counties to come up with a local initiative, the Give Local Now initiative, and folks can find out more about it at givelocalnow.org. We have 400 some nonprofits in our area that are participating in this effort that will begin at midnight on May 6th. Begin at midnight on May 6th, and will go throughout the day, where people can go online, see the list of participating nonprofits, choose which ones they want to donate to, make their donation in a secure environment, by the way, make a secure donation. And what's great about this is that many of these donations, if not all the donations, will also have a match associated with them for donations made on May 6th, on the day of giving. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to recognize the Placer Community Foundation for their effort in moving this initiative forward, and encourage folks. Nearly a quarter of the 400 in our region, nearly a quarter, are Placer County nonprofits. Everything from services provided to the homeless and elderly, to animals and children, and if you and the arts. I mean, if you've heard of a nonprofit or supported a nonprofit, the odds are they're probably participating in this. And so this would be a good day, not only for you to then redouble your own giving, but encourage others who have not given before, encourage others to jump online and participate in this as well. And so with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Williams, no stranger to our chambers here, to address our board on this important event.
I'm Jim Williams. As you all know, I'm here today with Veronica Blake, who is our executive director, our staff from the Community Foundation, and several of our board members as well. And we just want to thank you all very much, and particularly Kirk, for bringing this forward, proclaiming May 6th, which is also Willie Mae's birthday, as the big day of giving. As you know, our mission as the Community Foundation is to grow philanthropy in our area. I think many of you are aware that we recently completed our leadership training for nonprofits in Placer County, trying to encourage them to be able to do better work and grow philanthropy throughout our county, as it is much needed. We have raised money to offer prize challenges to our Placer nonprofits and a pool of matching funds that has been raised within the region. So this means that when you give on $25 or more on May, it's leveraging the gift to go much further. All gifts go directly to the nonprofit that you select at givelocalnow.org. We will be holding a kickoff event at Westfield Galleria in Roseville on May 6th between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., at which people can learn about the whole program, about the different nonprofits and the services they provide. There will also be entertainment and prizes to people who donate right then and there. If you can, I would encourage you all to try and make an appearance out there. We anticipate raising $1 million or more on this May 6th, but the awareness and visibility of the day will bring to our local nonprofits a far-reaching impact. It would be hard to find a nonprofit in Placer County that isn't addressing some cause: arts, education, open space, health and human services, animal welfare, deeply important to individuals and families in our community. Chances are good that these groups are participating in the big day of giving. And I just saw that your next item will be discussing Child Abuse Prevention Month, and there are a number of these local nonprofits that provide services and are dedicated to directly serving neglected and abused children. Our nonprofit organizations are deserving of our support, and we sincerely appreciate your help in encouraging people to give where their heart is on May 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And, Mr. Chairman, with the indulgence of the board and the audience, I believe it's been requested that all 5 board members yes, I'm seeing the head nodding very strongly affirmatively. So we are all 5 requested for the photo in recognition of this. So where would you like us to do it? Yeah.
I think that we're going to do it.
We're going to coordinate it with Kids First.
With Kids First.
Oh, with
Yeah.
Kids First?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Right after that.
That's right.
Little bits of information. Where's Durfee? I need Durfee to guide me through all this. All right, well, then I'll go ahead and present this to you right now, and then we'll do the group photo.
That works.
It's perfect. Yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
How are you, sir?
I'm great.
Good, thank you. Let's go ahead and do a quick one right here with the 3 of us. How's
get
that?
in
And then we'll
there,
do
yeah.
the whole group. Okay, all right. Well, we'll do a quick one. That work? Great. All right.
Thank you.
You betcha.
Thank you.
All righty. Now, we are going to move to our 9:20 a.m., and this is a proclamation presentation to Kids First, declaring April 2014 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Supervisor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my honor to present a proclamation declaring April 2014 as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month in Placer County. So if you'll bear with me, I'll read this nice proclamation. Whereas all adults and caregivers have a responsibility as neighbors, community members, and citizens of Placer County to help create healthy, safe, nurturing experiences for children and youth. And whereas safe and healthy childhoods help produce confident, successful, and independent adults, and whereas child abuse and neglect often occurs when people find themselves in isolated or stressful situations without community resources and don't know how to cope. And whereas the majority of child abuse cases stem from situations and conditions that are preventable when our communities are supportive, active, and engaged. And whereas child abuse and neglect can be reduced by making sure every family has the support it needs and deserves to raise their children in a healthy environment. And whereas effective prevention programs succeed because of partnerships among agencies, schools, religious organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community, and Placer County's collaborative is among the most effective in the country. And whereas for 25 years, Kids First, a child abuse prevention agency comprised of 3 family resource centers located in Roseville, Auburn, and Citrus Heights, has served the Sierra Sacramento region as a child abuse prevention council, and whereas wearing a blue ribbon, like this one, or displaying a pinwheel, like this one, in April will serve as a positive reminder that together we can prevent child abuse and keep children safe. Now therefore let it be proclaimed that Placer County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim April 2014 as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. Congratulations. I'll bring this down and then we'll go out and have our...
Thank you very much. And then what time do you guys want to Okay, Lisa Velarde, CEO, Kids First. Thank you very much. We just celebrated our luncheon, as some of you may know, and one of the things that we did share is that we are very proud to serve in this capacity that you designated us for. This role is very important to us. We're serving thousands and thousands of children the past 25 years through the Family Resource Services, and I think one of the things that we mentioned was that works is prevention. So on behalf of our board of directors, whom are standing behind me or with me, and Kids First staff, I really thank you. I also wanted to say, we couldn't do this without this integrated system of support and working with your team at Children's System of Care, Richard Connect. We also work with Cheryl Davis with Health and Maureen with Adult Services, and it is very much a collaborative effort. But the integrated services support with law enforcement, education, our health community, our faith-based organizations, and the public-private sector is the safety net and what makes this work along with you. So I thank you very much for taking a stand and for your leadership in helping us make this Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. And I'll see if Peggy, our board chair, would like to say anything. Thank you.
You know, just thank you very much for all your support. It's without you, we couldn't be able to provide all of the services for the children and the families in Placer County. So thank you very much for your continued support for us.
Thank you. And that being said, we're going to be taking a brief recess to go outside and take a picture, and then we'll be back. The Board of Supervisors is back in session. We are now going to take up our fourth timed item. It's a 9:30 item, Facility Services, annexation of Midori property to County Sewer Maintenance District 1. And that is Kevin Bell.
Good morning, Chairman Holmes, or Chairman Duran.
Old script.
I used this last time.
All right. Okay.
Good morning, Chairman Duran and
All
members
right.
of your board.
All right.
I'm Kevin Bell. I'm the Environmental Engineering Program Manager with Facility Services. Yeah. I'm here this morning to request your board hold a public hearing to consider annexation of parcel 075-182-003-000 into Sewer Maintenance District 1. The property is located near the end of Christian Valley Road in North Auburn. Midori Properties, LLC requested the annexation to provide sewer service to the 2.84-acre parcel. If approved, the applicant will be required to pay the annexation fee in effect at the time that they choose to make payment. And the current fee is $6,344 per EDU, and this would be a 1 EDU annexation. Staff supports this request, and the action I have for you is to hold a public hearing, and at the end of the hearing, adopt the resolution included in the staff report to annex parcel 075-182-003-000 into SMD1. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that your board has.
None at this time. Great, then we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that want to come forward and talk about the proposed annexation of the Midori property to SMD1? Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll bring this item forward to the board.
I move the item.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Thank you, Chairman Duran.
Thank you. We'll move to our 9:45 timed item, and this is a request for concurrence proposed conveyance of the Colfax Indian Cemetery, and it looks like we're receiving a request. And Holly, you want to give us the update here?
Yep. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The item before you is the proposed conveyance of the Colfax Cemetery to the United Auburn Indian Community in Colfax. As you may recall, the Health and Safety Code requires your board's concurrence for transfer of the cemetery to the United Auburn Indian Community. Your board scheduled and we publicly noticed a public hearing on March 11th, which was subsequently continued to today's date in hopes that the parties would reach agreement on the terms and conditions of the transfer of that cemetery. To date, that has not occurred, so we're requesting today that you continue it to a date uncertain, and we will renotice when the parties reach agreement. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or I believe Rob Sandman is here, who has been working on this issue on an ongoing basis.
Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? I'll go ahead and bring it back to the board and entertain a motion.
I move that we continue to the public hearing regarding the proposed conveyance to a future date to be renoticed upon agreement of the parties.
Great. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? This motion to postpone carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. We'll now move on to our department items. Our first item here is Administrative Services Procurement. Renew, BPO, DPW, and Road Maintenance, Brett Wood and John Manning.
Good morning, Supervisor Duran, Supervisors. My name is Brett Wood. I'm Procurement Manager. With me is Mr. John Manning, a buyer in the Procurement Division. We're here today with item number 6, requesting your approval to renew a competitive agreement and a blanket purchase order with Vulcan Materials of Roseville and Grass Valley, and a negotiated agreement with Tigert Aggregates of Truckee, California, for asphalt concrete products in an aggregate amount of $897,000 to be used by the Department of Public Works for road road projects over the next year. Mr. Manning will provide some additional background, and then we're happy to stand for any questions you have.
Good morning. The Department of Public Works Road Maintenance Division requires annual blanket purchase orders for the purchase of asphalt concrete products on an as-needed basis for their road maintenance operations. The blanket purchase orders awarded to Vulcan Materials of Roseville and Vulcan Materials of Grass Valley support the department's requirements for western Placer County, and the blanket purchase order that was awarded to Tykert Aggregates supports the department's requirements for eastern Placer County. These blanket purchase orders expired on March 31st of this year. Vulcan Materials of Roseville and Grass Valley agreed to renew at the same pricing and terms. Tykert Aggregates agreed to renew for another one-year term with proposed price increases, averaging 0.67% overall. These proposed increases are attributed to rising costs for materials and transportation. Current market conditions indicate that these proposed increases are reasonable, and the department has been satisfied with the vendor's level of service and products that they've provided to the county. In conclusion, we're requesting your board's approval to award blanket purchase orders to Vulcan Materials Roseville, Vulcan Materials Grass Valley, and Tykert Aggregates in the maximum aggregate amount of $897,000 for the period of April 8th, 2014 through March 31st of 2015. I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Any questions of the board? Any questions of the public? Great. I'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion. All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll now move on to our auditor controller item, request for proposal number 10322, countywide audit services award contract recommendation.
Good morning, Chairman Duran and members of the board. David and Jerry, I'm here before you today to ask your board to award a contract for countywide audit services to the firm of Vavrinick, Trine and Day for a period of 3 years, not to exceed $592,194, and also to authorize the auditor controller to sign said contract and any related amendments up to 10% of that contract. As you may know, government code requires an annual audit of the county's books and records. Also, various auditing standards, and of course the federal government also requires an annual audit of the county's books and records, what is encompassed in a single audit. But GFOA, in their best practices, the Government Finance Officers Association requires or recommends that every 5 years you go out to bid for audit services. And accordingly, our 5 years is up with our prior firm, and we went out to bid. We did get 4 bids for audit services. I want to thank the members that were on the panel from HHS, Facility Services, CEO, and my staff for participating on that panel. Also want to thank Admin Services for helping us through the RFP process. We don't do this very often in the auditor's office. We get this happening to us about once every 4 or 5 years, and so we appreciate their assistance. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the items for the actions requested.
Are there any questions of the board? Yes, Supervisor Holmes.
The audit firm that currently provides the services has done a tremendous job, of my understanding. So, in the wisdom of the federal government, that they think we should change every 5 years?
You know, it's always a difficult question to answer. You're right, the prior firm did good work for us. They were allowed to bid on the audit, and they came back for an interview, and the panel decided to select a different firm based on the process that we went through. I'm a firm believer in the process that we need to do this. I know the state controller recently has passed some legislation as well that states, starting in 13-14, a CPA firm can stay with a government client for longer than 6 years, but after the 6th year, the audit partner would need to rotate off and a new audit partner would need to come on. So there are government agencies out there that do use firms longer than 5 years, but I think the federal government would also say competition is good and it's good to have a fresh look every now and then.
Okay. Thank you.
And Andy, the interaction with the county's audit committee is going to be along similar lines as to what reoccurred or what was occurring with the prior auditor.
That's correct. Today we will not have the external auditors there. because we're kind of in transition here from one firm to another. But at the next audit committee meeting, yes, the new firm that is hopefully going to get the contract award will be there.
Okay, great. All right, then that being said, I'll go ahead and bring this back to the board. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. All those, any opposition, any abstention? Okay, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Randy. We're going to move on to our Community Development Resource Agency Planning Services Division, Water Conservation Forum. Brett Story.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chairman and board members. Are you hearing me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Brett Story from Cedra Organization. And as you know, the amount of rainfall and snow has been less than we'd hoped for this past year, and as a result, the state had declared a drought in January of this year. In early February, upon your board hearing of our local conditions, you were rightly concerned and directed staff to review all actions possible to come back to you at a later date. We are here today. And while we have had some rain, which has lowered the severity of the drought, the region still needs to work together to bring forward all actions possible to make sure that we make it through this situation. Purpose today is to update your board on the current regulations and departmental actions to date during this drought, to bring forward some sustainable water conservation options that you as a board can direct staff to work with, and then certainly to have a policy level discussion and direction by your board at the end of it. And I will be trying to take notes, and hopefully at the end we can coordinate on the issues that you wish to have all the departments move forward with. I'll give you a little bit of background on how this all works, which you probably already know, but I'll walk through it. There is a federal and a state responsibility for water for our systems that affect Placer County. We have the Middle Fork Project, which is the American River, the Drum Spalding Project, which is the Yuba and Bear Rivers, and then Lake Tahoe. When we get water from all those sources, they are all regulated by both federal and state guidelines. We've recently, as you know, gone through a process for FERC relicensing on the Middle Fork Project on the American River Middle Fork, as well as right now the Drum Spalding is going through its relicensing. Out of that comes conditions that will allow certain amounts of water to be used. They do respect water rights, and we have done, as staff, protected our water rights as they are known to us, and we are allowed to. But there are, in drought years, as we're finding out this year, they are able to cut back some of those water rights. Lake Tahoe has similar regulations and restrictions, and I don't know the specific details of those, but they are handled in much the same way, and you'll hear a little bit about that area here coming up. The operational authority, of course, that we're most concerned about is Folsom Reservoir. Currently, they have, in January, they did cut back. They have increased their releases somewhat for salmon, and then they are back to what everyone in the region believes is the way they should be. We still need to protect against future operations. And the interactions with that, we have been recently asked by Placer County Water Agency, who, of course, is the main one that provides water to the western Placer County area, to participate with them in discussions with the Bureau of Reclamation and other federal and state agencies to make sure that our needs and desires are known, as we have many residents who are dependent upon that water out of Folsom Reservoir. So we will be taking a much more participatory role in talking with them. As a matter of fact, in May, I know your CEO, David Bosch, and certainly Supervisor Euler are going back to D.C. I will also be going back, and we will be talking with our legislative and BOR representatives with PCWA in the room. So we're going to try to make a consolidated front to make sure we are protecting for our citizens. A little bit about the local agency responsibility. You know, their deal is to provide clean water. They do water resource planning and management. They do retail and wholesale supply of irrigation and drinking water. That is their mission. And a little bit about what I did is put together a simple chart about the main water agencies, the drought actions they have taken, and whether or not they have conservation rebates for things like replacing lawn and faucets and those sorts of things. You will see Placer County Water Agency right now has a voluntary 20% reduction. They have a special board meeting this Thursday where they are looking at potentially changing that. Nevada Irrigation District, again, has voluntary, and they have a Wednesday meeting looking at potentially changing that. I don't know the answers because their board obviously would have to go through those issues. City of Roseville has a voluntary 20%. San Juan had to go to a mandatory 20% because they get almost all their water off Folsom and don't have a lot of other sources of water. Cal American, who is a franchise agreement through your board, they actually had to get a Public Utilities Commission request to do a voluntary 20% reduction because they are regulated by the PUC. The City of Lincoln has a voluntary. And we tried to reach all 35 of the Tahoe area water purveyors, and we're not successful with all of them, but some did call us back and let us know they don't have any drought actions necessary yet, but they are trying to abide by the governor's 20% voluntary, and they do have some conservation rebates. So that's just a little bit for you to realize about what's going on. A little bit about where the county fits in through our, both in surface and groundwater. It fits in through our general plan, and we have a goal for water supply and delivery, and that is to ensure availability of adequate and safe water supply and the maintenance of a high-quality water and water bodies and aquifers used as sources of that domestic supply. Our general plan has 13 policies that relate to water. They vary from new development availability and growth rate to guidelines for use, metering, water quality standards. They promote efficient water use, which you'll hear about today. They reduce water demand, look at reclaimed water use, groundwater use, and agricultural use, and some other items that aren't pertinent for today. And then there are 3 general plan implementation programs that deal specifically with water quality that is already in our methods. A little bit about what you're going to hear today. We have a number of county departments that do great work in this area, and I've asked each of them to present a little bit of information about what they're doing. In their first slide, what they have done to date in the drought, and if they have a second successive slide, it's about what could be done and what your board could understand and help with the process of implementing in the future. Just not to leave the sheriffs out, they're obviously very busy. We did contact the sheriff's office, and they are doing their best to wash vehicles only when necessary, thereby using less water. And then I did want to give one statement for the Air Pollution Control District. Staff prepared a grant due to the drought to try to get communities out and active early to get rid of their defensible space material before the opportunity for a fire might exist near homes. And they, at their Thursday board meeting, they're recommending their board, they award the county $30,000 to help with all citizens throughout the county to do that good work before the fire season hits. Hopefully that'll save water with less fires. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Wesley Nix, the Director of Environmental Health for the county. Wes?
Thanks, Brett. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board. As you know, environmental health regulates public water systems, the smaller public water systems with less than 200 service connections, and the state regulates all of the larger systems. We analyze the water for bacteria, make sure basically it's not present, and that we look at chemical screening analysis to make sure that maximum contaminant levels are not exceeded so that the water is safe to drink on those connections. We also inspect all well water installations to make sure that groundwater is protected, to make sure that those wells are installed to standards and that sanitary seals are in place so surface water cannot infiltrate and contaminate subsurface groundwater. So the next slide.
Okay, if it pleases the board, if you have questions and responses now as the departmental items go through, we'd appreciate that. That way we can get your direct thoughts on that.
Supervisor Montgomery.
Wes, thank you. One of the questions that I have is relating to gray water, and I'm not sure if that's a question for you or if it's a question for the building department or for both of you. I think I'll start with you, and then I'll probably ask Tim later.
Right.
One of the concerns that I've heard from a number of people is that we have a very limited capacity for gray water implementation, either in new or remodel construction. And part of what I've heard is that that's really an issue more with environmental health concerns than building department concerns. Can you just address that and sort of give us your take on how we might be able to boost our gray water use?
Certainly. I have discussed that with your building official, Mr. Wagner, and we have looked at the plumbing code, which he will address in quite a bit more detail in a moment, and the health and safety code, and tried to find the most direct and efficient way to go about that and use groundwater where appropriate. I mean gray water where appropriate. There is elements in the plumbing code that allow it, and health and safety code is not a hindrance to that. For subsurface gray water use for landscaping, irrigation, and other uses like that. New building construction can be designed through building permits, again, within the building department, to reuse groundwater, even bring it back into the home, part of a black water usage. So it's two separate plumbing issues. Retrofitting an existing home would be quite a bit more difficult. An existing home can use a simple connection from the washing machine, for example, to irrigate, again, landscaping, as long as it's subsurface and that setbacks are maintained from drinking water sources such as wells or streams. So there are ways to do that now. We certainly encourage the use of gray water wherever it's appropriate to try to conserve fresh water.
And can you just explain a little bit more in depth the subsurface requirement? Is that an environmental health requirement, or is that a building requirement? And I'm sorry if I'm crossing over departments here.
Right, I believe it's both, actually, in the plumbing code as well, but it is also in the health and safety code. Gray water is essentially still sewage. It's just diluted by quite a bit. So we need to protect animals and people from coming in contact with potential pathogens that could be in that wastewater stream. So subsurface discharge would do that.
Just so people don't get absolutely terrified by what you just said. Gray water is from showers, dishwashers, washing machines, sinks, but
laundry,
not toilets.
Exactly. Nothing from the kitchen, no food items, and no toilets, black water items. So gray water is everything else, essentially showers, sinks, and the clothes washer.
When you say sewage, I'm sure that freaked a few people out.
That's right. Sewage includes all of that, including...
Right, understood.
Right. So it'd be a separate thing. So it's essentially diluted out, but it still could carry pathogens. So it needs to be discharged subsurface in order to protect public health.
With the idea that the soil provides a filtration medium for whatever pathogens are in there?
That's correct. Pathogens like to live in mammals. They don't really like to be in the ground where it's cold, and they don't live very long. And they'll sterilize wastewater within 3 or 4 feet. Infiltration or percolation through soil.
Okay, thank you.
Great. There's your next slide, Wes.
Okay, thanks. So environmental health is tracking well construction permits to determine if there are any drought-related impacts. The trend analysis that we've been looking at for new wells, especially well deepening permits, so far we've seen an uptick in permit activity, but it's been mostly related to economic activity. We don't see a lot of a trend towards drought. Maybe a couple of wells that were put in for agriculture water production that may be staging for cutoffs or restrictions, but that's about it. To date, we have seen 2 public water systems that we regulate identified as being affected by the drought. The Ophir Gardens system has 16 service connections. They have been supplementing their potable water supply with deliveries from hauled water, in which we only have one certified potable water hauler in Placer County. That is one vulnerability that we identified. So we may reach out to regional areas to identify other certified water haulers that we could use if we needed them. So Ophir Gardens was, that system was a little bit stressed to start with. Their well was not producing a large amount of water and seems to have tapered off drastically in the last 6 months. So water delivery has been required into their tankage system to supplant what the well has been producing. Currently working with the USDA and the Placer County Water Agency to collaborate with them to try to get funding to extend a main line near there so they can connect to pipe-treated water and resolve the problem. They would no longer need their groundwater well. We've been working extensively with the regional board, state, and county OES to try to help facilitate that. The other system that's been impacted is the North Eden Valley, a 21 service connection public water system that had to drill a second well. The primary well, again, tapered off, and it wasn't quite enough to sustain the water usage during their peak times. So a second well was put in. Both the original well and the second well added together is producing enough water to sustain that 21 service connection system. And environmental health work to expedite the permit process worked really closely with the well driller to, I think we broke a record on how fast we can get a well put in so that to sustain that, which we're trying to be as reactive as possible to anything that is impacted by the drought. Other than that, we've been working really closely with the building department, looking at gray water options and other wastewater uses that could alleviate some freshwater usage wherever it's appropriate. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have.
Any follow-up questions?
Great. Thanks, Wes.
Sure.
Thank you, Wes.
Next, we're going to hear from Rui Cunha, the Assistant Director of Emergency Services.
Good morning, Supervisor Duran, members of the board. I'm just going to give you a short presentation on some of the functions that the Office of Emergency Services is responsible to related to this water forum and water conservation in general. For the most part, the Office of Emergency Services is focused on the mitigation actions, mitigation of drought conditions. Clearly, as we look at our broad water usage within as it is associated with the drought, there are opportunities to look at and consider mitigation projects that the communities and the various jurisdictions within Placer County can consider and can seek funding for, whether it's local funding or certainly state or federal funding. A recognized best practice in pulling together some of those mitigation plans, certainly as it relates to making us as competitive as possible for some of those dollars, is through our local hazard mitigation planning process. We have a local hazard mitigation plan that was approved by your board in 2010. We're due to update that plan in 2015. We're in the final round of consideration for funding for that planning process, and that plan will cover all jurisdictions within Placer County, except for the city of Roseville, who's chosen to do their own hazard mitigation plan, but we work very, very closely with them in that process. One of the key elements that will be added in this year's plan are considerations for climate change. Certainly drought will be one of those, and one of the things that we'll certainly be looking at is larger projects that will allow us to capture gray water and use gray water from a broader perspective. Clearly that will be one of those project opportunities. So that's the primary focus on the Office of Emergency Services. It's primarily to make us as competitive as we can be for some of the available federal funding for these types of projects. On the Placer County fire side, a little more practical in terms of actually saving water, but certainly one of them is we have reduced our wet drills within the Placer County fire system, which means we're not hooking up to hydrants and recharging our engines and spraying water. It is something that we've done as a routine every year. It does help us to make sure that the systems are flowing the way that they're supposed to be flowing. We feel pretty good about it. Certainly in our work with our various water providers, we're feeling pretty good that our hydrants are well charged and we're going to be fine. However, we're not doing the wet drills this year, certainly at the pace that we have in the past. We are reducing watering in landscape stations as are most other jurisdictions. We are reducing vehicle washing and just washing the vehicles when they're needed, similar to the sheriff's office. And we are going to spend a couple dollars on some water saving fixtures within our stations. So certainly those will be a couple of the areas that we'll be working on for this year. Any questions that the board might have?
All righty. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kimberly Hawley, our Chief Deputy Treasurer on the Empower program. Apparently, we're not going to hear from
Kimberly, you've changed.
Cut my hair. Good morning, Chairman Duran, members of the board, David and Jerry. I'm Eric Wademan, Assistant Treasurer Tax Collector. It's good to be here with you this morning. I'm representing Empower this morning, and through Empower Placer, property Placer County property owners can reduce their water usage during the drought with financing from Empower Placer for the following type of projects that you see up there: the replacing of old irrigation systems with high-efficiency spray nozzles and low-volume drip systems, installing weather-based or smart irrigation controllers, replacing inefficient water fixtures and toilets with low-flow fixtures. That was a good one. Installing new technology hot water delivery systems, installing solar water heating, replacing conventional landscaping with artificial turf. To date, fiscal year to date, we've provided financing for these types of projects in the county for over in the amount of over $128,000. They've been done in the unincorporated areas in and around Auburn, Colfax, Forest Hill, Loomis, and Auburn, as well as within the cities of Auburn, Roseville, Lincoln, Rockland, and the town of Loomis. And going forward, Empower Placer will continue to promote water efficiency improvements through the cities, partners, agencies, and districts that we work with. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Supervisor Montgomery.
Yes, thank you. One of the questions I had is, it seems that there's some incredible opportunities for the Empower program partnering with our agricultural partners. Has there been any specific or targeted outreach to agricultural water users to let them know that this is available?
You know, let me call up Liz Wheel from, she's an Empower specialist. She's done a lot of the the research outreach herself. Boy, I am tongue-tied today. I apologize. Thank you, Liz, for coming.
Good morning. The Empower program continues to do a number of outreach programs with local water agencies and a lot of our local utility providers such as SMUD, PG&E, Liberty Energy up at the lake, and Roseville Electric. So we have ongoing efforts with all of our partners that are the utility providers to come up with new and innovative ways to introduce these measures to the community and get the word out. I know that we have done a number of mailings for PCWA, and we're also working with the City of Roseville.
Okay, so it sounds like no specific outreach to the agricultural community so far. Okay, I'm not quite sure what's going to be entirely in Josh's presentation, but I would suggest that you guys maybe get together and have a conversation about how to reach out directly to the users rather than the providers. I think that might actually be a more effective use, at least as it relates to agricultural water.
And I believe that those conversations have already started.
Okay.
We have been in contact, so we're definitely looking to do more outreach within our agricultural community.
Great, thank you, because I know they're very concerned about how to most efficiently use the water that they're going to be receiving, and just making sure that they're aware of all the options, I think, is going to be critically important moving forward, not just this year, but into the future. So I thank you for your outreach to date, and I'd be happy to, help with those conversations if you think it'll help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh, did you have did you want to chime in on this piece?
Yeah, I can specifically address this. Good morning, Josh Hunsinger, Placer County Agricultural Commissioner. So two things done to date. We've been using the agricultural, and this is jumping ahead into my presentation.
Well, I think you're the next slide.
Yeah.
So that's perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Well, I'll just start off with that in that the county has the Placer County Agricultural Commission, which is a advisory body to the Board of Supervisors made up of 9 members of our agricultural community who meet on a monthly basis to provide a forum to the public and then also formulate recommendations to your board. And I believe it was the March meeting. I was sick and it was kind of a blur, but actually Janine Windenhausen, the Placer County Treasurer Tax Collector, came to that Agricultural Commission meeting and gave a thorough presentation on the Empower program. We advertised that meeting heavily to the ag community as an opportunity to come and learn about the Empower program. And then Janine did give a thorough presentation on the Empower program, specifically as it would relate to opportunities for the agricultural community. Additionally, we're in the process of issuing all of our pesticide permits. They expire on an annual basis, and so we renew them at the beginning of every calendar year. And so the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office has provided us with Empower brochures, and we're doing some outreach when each grower comes in to renew their pesticide permits. So I don't know if that answers your question a little more thoroughly, but yeah, we are proactively addressing Empower and trying to get the word out to our ag community.
Okay, and it's on. The Empower folks snuck out before my last comment, which was I would also suggest some additional outreach to the ski resorts on the east end of the county. A lot of snowmaking production up there, and I think there may be some opportunities to work with the ski resorts to see, are there better, more efficient ways of using the water, and can Empower help with that? So thank you both. I appreciate it. Sorry, Josh.
No. So with that, I just, I've been saying it's the 3 C's with agriculture: communication, collaboration, and cooperation. And that's really what's been evidenced throughout Placer County's agricultural community. It's not just the county's agriculture department. We have county, state, and federal partners that are all cooperating with the farming and ranching community to really get everybody through this. It's I'm sure there's lots of industries that depend on water, but agriculture is 100% reliant on water to exist. And so it's really, I'm not sure if there's another group of folks who are quite as reliant on water. Just to go through these really quick, our UC Cooperative Extension Farm Advisors are really a key partner. They've been doing a lot of work with workshops and grower discussion groups, facilitating information sharing among the growers. They have monthly breakfasts. They put together a farmer and rancher Facebook page, which is a closed group, which is you have to have permission to participate and kind of verify your bona fides as far as being a farmer, and so that it's a safe place for farmers to get together and just discuss everything from, hey, do you have some extra hay I can buy from you, to how are you dealing with this. Really tremendous. As I mentioned, we've been using the Agricultural Commission, the county's agricultural forum, as an opportunity to share information. We've had presentations from the various irrigation districts. We've had presentations from the various state and federal partners on what they can do to assist. Empower, as I mentioned, we've really been utilizing that resource. We've also, through my department, been working very closely with both PCWA and NID. They've gone through a process of defining what commercial agriculture is and talking about what the process is if farmers have hardships or anything like that, to help them get through those. So we're really working hand in hand, and really kudos to both of those water agencies in how proactive they've been in outreaching and wanting to know how to best serve the ag community. Next slide. Couple other key partners: the Placer County Resource Conservation District, again doing a lot of workshops, helping people to design irrigation efficiencies and provide information to growers. And then our USDA partners, NRCS, and Farm Service agencies. There's been a whole host of federal programs made available. They're made available on a statewide level. A lot of the assistance sounds like some really big dollars, but when you spread it out over the largest agricultural state in the nation, those dollars, I'm not sure how many are actually getting to Placer County. And I think that's a good story in a way, just because as bad as it is for our growers, it's not quite as bad as a lot of other parts of the state where maybe some of it's being prioritized a little harder or a little more heavily. A couple more things just to make note of is that also Placer County Farm Bureau and Placer Grown are both very much in the loop and being very helpful in getting the word out to all the producers they represent. And really, just one last thing to mention is that I think our livestock producers have been the first to be really significantly impacted by the drought, because during the winter they don't rely on irrigation water, they rely on rainfall. And to give you an idea, in January, they did a forage study like they do every year at the UC Cooperative Extension field office. They had 9% of the normal forage growth in January, so a 91% reduction. As of April 1st, that's up to 68%. So those February, March and March rains we've had so far really did cause a burst in growth, but from October to January, it was really pretty dire, and we have had a lot of livestock sold off because there was just no feed and not much hay available because everybody's buying it up as fast as they can. So really, we're all banded together trying to communicate and let the growers know what opportunities and assistance are available. That's the big thing we're doing at this point. So thank you. Any questions?
One just comment, which is I know that we do yearly pesticide inspections and other inspections. I would just suggest that our inspectors travel with some of the Empower information so that we can just provide it directly to the farmer, to the rancher, to the producer, rather than, even though these are all great things that are happening, there's nothing more effective than that face-to-face contact.
Yeah, and that's what the permit system is, an opportunity. They have to sit down with us and they can't leave, so we
Absolutely.
have a captive audience.
Absolutely,
So.
because I think the question for all of us in our presentations today is what aren't we doing that we can start doing?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question, Josh.
Oh, yes.
What percentage of our overall ag economy is cattle ranching?
It's one of our top 5 crops dollar-wise, but I would say land use-wise, it is very dominant. Rangeland, I think we have over 100,000 acres of non-irrigated rangeland in the county, which is exactly what I talk about when I say that winter forage, where the farmers or the ranchers rely on Mother Nature to grow grass for them. And so it's very significant. From a land use perspective, it's dominant.
And then the animals themselves have a tendency to drink a lot of water as well, correct?
Yeah, and that's, I don't think any of the scenarios I'm seeing it's quite so dire that, cattle or sheep are completely out of water and don't have any to drink, but certainly we have the Bear River Canal failure from several years ago was a good exercise in how do we address that if it does get to that point.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're getting hit a little bit more because not only do they have the water issue, but they have the feed.
Right.
Yeah,
that's already
can't
happened.
grow enough feed, yeah. So, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Next, we'll hear from Ken Graham, Director of Public Works.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. My name is Ken Graham with the Department of Public Works. And within Public Works, we use water for, quite a wide variety of our operations. Up here, we show a few of those, grading and sweeping. All of those involve water to be able to conduct that, keep dust down. In addition to that, we do regular street side mowing. That mowing requires water to ensure our mowing operation can't throw out sparks. And with the fire season, we need to make sure that when we do that, water is involved in that operation. We also use it for general roadway maintenance cleanup, where, for lack of a better word, we use it to wash off the street. That's probably something you'll be seeing that we're probably going to be making great efforts to do a whole lot less than what we've done in the past. There are probably more efficient ways, including sweeping, that we can do to clean up our roadways. We do operate 5 corporation yards. All of those have domestic uses and some minor landscaping. Fortunately, at our facilities, they're all drip irrigation. Although as the drought progresses, we'll have to see how much water we actually provide. We are toning down the water use. Do we let it die or not? That will remain to be seen. And then we also use in the fleet operations, we use water to clean off the equipment before we transfer it, before we work on it. Actually, this year, we've been actually very fortunate, or unfortunate, depending on the case may be, with less snow, less maintenance, and less equipment that's had to be washed off. So that naturally has had a reduction in water use this year. In addition to that, we have all of our construction projects, all of our contractors for our $40 million program all use water in one form or another. As the drought conditions increase, as perhaps some of the levels increase, most of the water districts do have limitations on water use for construction. We'll be monitoring that closely. And then we also have very minor, actually, street landscaping that we maintain as Public Works. All that we do is, again, drip irrigated. Auburn, Folsom, Sheridan, where we've had some minor plantings. They're all drip irrigated, but we'll be having to monitor how much water we supply to those plant materials. What we're doing to reduce the amount of water that we use. First off, we're trying to minimize car washing. We used to do it with trustees over at our fleet management area. Every time we washed a car, that water flushed down and was gone, or gone to wherever it has to go to. Now we are strictly using commercial washing facilities. They recycle the water, which is a very positive. So not only do you get one car wash out of that water, you get several car washes out of that water. And so when we do it, that is how we're going to do it here for the immediate future. We also are going to start limiting the use of roadway maintenance, just water for general cleanup, cleaning for cleaning's sake. Only use it when we need to for a very specific purpose. Also, it's important to note we have our water trucks there. We do have the capability, all of our water trucks, of drawing from other sources other than hydrants or potable water. So when we can, we do use non-potable water. We do have some relationships with the water treatment, or excuse me, this wastewater treatment plants on the effluents, on the exit side, to utilize water for various uses that we may have. So we'll have to continually evaluate that, particularly as the drought progresses, and at some point make some decisions about how much mowing, how much grading, those types of activities, how much we will do that summer. We will evaluate that as we go into the summer, which is really our big construction season. And with that, be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Okay.
Thanks, Ken. Next, we'll hear from John Ramirez of Facility Services, our Parks Administrator.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Duran, members of the Board of Supervisors. I'm here to talk about the efforts that Placer County Parks and Grounds Division is undertaking, both to lower water currently and also what we're going to be doing in the future, what we're working towards. Placer County right now, we have 32 parks and we have 57 landscaped areas. So there's a lot of opportunity for major water savings in my particular division. Something that, again, we're all in this together. We're trying to save 20% over last year's baseline. It's going to be a real big challenge for us because we were already in water conservation mode before. So our staff is working really diligently on doing that and also on tracking that very carefully. We do have some older irrigation systems where we're putting timers on the hose bibs themselves. We have maintenance management plans where we list tasks, maintenance tasks and frequencies, and we've increased the frequencies both for testing irrigation systems as well as for getting out there and making sure that if there's any leaks that we're going to jump on them and make them a really high priority. We're working a lot on public outreach so that it's not just us that's looking for overwatering, overspray of sidewalks, planters, and landscaped areas, but we're asking the public to help us in that area also so that we're working together with them. We've gone to a lot of different MAC meetings, and it's always part of our message over these last few months to bring this up to them so that they understand that turf is going to look a little browner than it used to. We're going to keep trees alive. We're going to keep our sports fields safe and attractive for users, but we need their help when we have so many irrigation systems. There's going to be some failures, so rather than have them get upset and go to the paper, we want them to come to us so we can jump on it and fix it. Turf care practices we're following for high visibility lawns. We kind of debated amongst ourselves over that. In order to aerate, dethatch, fertilize, costs money, costs time, costs maintenance. But what we found out is that if you do that properly on your high visibility lawns, it accepts the water and it ends up using less water. So we're making that extra effort. Obviously, whenever we have the ability, we water in the evenings and in the night. That's not always the case with a lot of our older systems. One of the things we've asked staff to do is to evaluate all their landscapes. We have a lot of areas where we have strips of turf. They don't really serve a real big function, so we're trying to identify those, take those out, convert them to landscape planter areas or just bark them out. I think really unique what we did at Dry Creek Community Park is when we designed our parks originally, we had sports fields and then we put turf all over every acre of land that we had. Well, we're no longer doing that. If you go out to Dry Creek, you'll notice that the playfield has turf, but the outfield beyond that doesn't. So we're trying to cut back on how much turf we put in. Again, major savings in water down the road for us. So the next slide is what we're trying to do in the future to sustain water savings. We may or may not be successful in these areas, a lot of them. Some of them we have been and we're pursuing very strongly right now. First one's pretty exciting. We're expanding our central control water management system. And what that is, there's a computer dedicated to irrigation system here in Auburn in our park supervisor shop. And he's able to manage our new irrigation systems from Auburn. He can set the timers. It's a fantastic system. It waters to evapotranspiration rates, considers temperature, considers the needs of the different types of plants. If there's a break, the system shuts down, gives them an alarm, tells them where it is. If it's raining, automatically it turns it off. So it's really exciting. Technology has just come a long ways, and it's been a reliable system. And the best thing is it's user-friendly, so my park staff goes to take some training and they're able to use it. So we're expanding that right now in the Granite Bay area. We have some funding. We're going to do that down in the Dry Creek area next, and then we hope to expand future areas. We are continuing to pursue reclaimed water, Dry Creek Community Park. It's about 26 acres of parkland. Again, there's trees, shrubs, plants out there that need to be watered. So we're trying to get reclaimed water out there. We're allocating quite a bit of dollars towards that effort. In the long run, it'll save us a lot of potable water and money.
So currently, at Dry Creek, it is using potable water?
Correct, yes, and we're trying to transfer that over.
Thank you.
We do sit on the county's drought task force, and we're hoping as a result of that to get some more knowledge of other funding opportunities wherever they might be for some of these future plans that we have up there. One of our older irrigation systems is at the Placer County Government Center, DeWitt. So what we're trying to do there is, again, automate irrigation systems wherever we can pick up the funding, even if it's small lawn areas. And then we're also exploring the possibility of tapping into the canal water that's right there on the site. So again, not saying we're going to do it for sure, but we're sure trying. That's something we're working towards in the future. And another big effort, we're planning for vehicle wash facilities both at the Placer County Government Center and South Placer Justice Center that use reclaimed water, and that would eliminate hand washing of vehicles. So again, we've gone to several MACs over the last few months, got a lot more ideas in this. This is kind of summarizing what I think are the key ones that we're working towards. The public's been very understanding with the less water they're seeing out there in their parks. We also posted this information on our county website and in our park kiosk. So doing everything we can to in public outreach. So are there any questions?
I do, of
Yes.
course, have a couple of questions. You said that turf care practices are being followed on high visibility lawns. How do we determine what a high visibility lawn is?
Again, we have maintenance management plans, and that establishes service levels. And the service levels, again, generally they're high, they're medium, and they're low. Our newer buildings, for example, at the Placer County Government Center, the Cedar Building, around here, those are high visibility, high use, so we make sure we keep the lawns nice and green all the time. Also the sports fields, because the kids are playing hardball baseball and the ball's got to bounce reliably, so it's a safety factor. So those are our highest rated sites. And then we have some other lawns that are like Loomis Basin Community Park, where it's a mixture of grasses that has grown over the years that aren't as high a quality when it's not in the sports field itself.
Okay, I would encourage us to maybe change our thinking so that high visibility isn't our metric, but high use is our metric. Because, yeah, we've got lawns out, at the government center, and we've got lawns here, and some of them are quite small because they're in median strips, but they do get watered. They don't get used. I mean, it's not like you see people sitting out on the lawn at Cedra, right there in that strip by the parking lot. And so I think part of our question should be, what's high use versus high visibility? And are there some opportunities with some of those high visibility lawns that don't get used to take a different management method for those?
Thank you.
The plan for the vehicle wash facilities at the Government Center and South Placer Justice Center, would that be new buildings? Would that be new construction?
I'm sorry, I'm going to turn that over to Mary. I really don't know too much about it.
Okay, thank you, John.
Mary Dietrich.
Yes, we are just contemplating that in terms of master planning. We'll be looking at the Placer County Government Center here shortly, and that's one of the areas that we could incorporate into the DPW yard. Might be a vehicle wash facility. And then in South Placer, too, it's just a consideration. There will be, I think, a higher sheriff presence down in that area that would give an opportunity to discontinue the hand washing that happens related to their operations with inmates.
Okay, I would encourage us as part of that process of looking into that to analyze the cost of new construction and ongoing maintenance of county buildings versus contracting with existing, car wash facilities that are privately owned.
That's right. And up here in Auburn, that's what we do, or that's what Fleet does right now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, John and Mary.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Edmund Sullivan, a senior planner in the Cedar Department.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Board. It's a pleasure to be here to update you on some of the things we're doing in the Planning Division. We don't use much water in the Planning Division, but we definitely have planning practices and policies that can influence the use of water. And one of the things that we've been working with in collaboration with the DPW Stormwater Group is sort of implementation of low-impact development. And that's sort of managing stormwater on the site. And I can address some questions if there's some particular questions about what that is. But for the sake of speed, I'll just sort of deal quickly with what I have written down here. So this is a stormwater management and land development strategy. We currently have a LID guidebook that's being implemented in the Sierras. And I'm proud to say that the LID guidebook was the 2013 California Stormwater Quality Association Sustainable Stormwater Planning Project Award winner. So we're also we're working collaboratively with the cities, Town of Loomis, and again, DPW to develop a guidebook for Western Placer County. And that's, the RFP just went out, and we're in the process of hiring a consulting firm to help with that development of that guidebook. So LID sort of in a broad sense, and I'll say in particular in the book, the guidebook that we have developed for the Sierras, sort of looks at some of the things that have been discussed already by Empower and some of the things that John was talking about, how to make it, get away from the green lawn idea. So one of the big things is the replacement of turf areas with drought-tolerant landscaping and efficient irrigation systems, sort of like the smart watering system like John was referring to, and trying to get people and, commercial and residential users of water to kind of go in that direction with landscaping. A lot of water is used to keep grass green. Less impervious surface is sort of the main objective of LID to, so you have a site and you try to say, okay, how can we reduce the amount of impervious cover on the site? So one of the benefits of that is improved groundwater recharge. If you have more natural infiltration, you have less water, either going directly too quickly into the storm water. So there is the potential where there are aquifers to have improved recharge of the groundwater. Use of cisterns, it's an old technology, but you have them off of downspouts, and then that can be used to irrigate your vegetable garden or your lawn, and that's something that you're seeing done very creatively in the Southwest and the Bay Area, and it certainly could be used more here in our county. Also is the use of bioretention and biofiltration filters, which are primarily a water quality feature, but they can also be part of that groundwater recharge system. LID is only one piece of an integrated, sustainable solution to improving water supply and water quality. Got some pictures here just to give you an idea of what these features look like. So this is a street planner, so they can be very attractive, and you notice there's no green lawn there. And they would be drought-tolerant plants, and they would also serve as a benefit for improving water quality coming off the site, running off sidewalks. Next one is filter strips. This is something that is not in Placer, it's in the city of Portland. But this thing right here is you built right into the road a water treatment system that's adjacent. So it's part of the road system, so you can adapt LID to managing stormwater and improving water quality and water supply, even with roads. And finally, this is a rain garden. So this is a building where you can see there's detached downspouts, and the water's flowing directly into the landscaped area. You can see it's quite attractive. So these features can enhance the aesthetic of a building or a streetscape. And any questions?
One quick one.
Sure.
What's our timeline on the development for Western Placer County?
Hopefully within a year, if not sooner.
Okay.
So,
I think there's
yeah.
some real opportunities for the amount of development that's coming forward in Western Placer County to kind of get out in front of that and say, here's our new guidelines, rather than let that opportunity pass by and then adopt the guidelines.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. And hopefully we can coordinate this with the, there's also new regs at the state, which I didn't get into, the MS4 permit. You guys have probably heard about it. So some of it will be driven by regulation, and some of it can be driven by good policy at the local level, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you.
Thanks, Edmund. Next, we're going to hear from Tim Wegner, the county's chief building official.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My pleasure to be here today to present to you that the county is fairly well positioned today, actually, for water conservation. And I'd like to let you know that really since 1994, your board and previous boards have adopted codes, the updated codes that have come through our state and nationally. And with those code adoptions since 94, we've seen low flow requirements for fixture change outs as we go through new construction and through remodeling. But today I really want to let you know that from a mandatory standpoint, we do see that the requirement for low flow fixtures with any new construction, new homes or commercial buildings as they might go in, we certainly are seeing some requirements for some lower flowing, landscape irrigation controls. If they're installed at the time that we're out for final inspections, we want to make sure that they have the rain sensors or weather station type data that's feeding into those to make sure the moisture content is appropriate. Again, existing construction today, when we see remodels, tenant improvements, additions, and those type of things going on, we are looking for the low flow fixtures if they are changing out those at that point in time as well. Kind of an interesting fact is the federal EPA shares that really toilets account for 30% of our residential water consumption. And you can see by my pictorial up above there, a pre-1980 model, whether it's a 5 or 7 gallon fixture, you can save by today's model between 68 and 77% with each flush, and that's quite a wide range, as you can see there. So toilets are a huge water consumer. Now, before I move on to my next slide, I just want to ask if you had any questions about mandatory measures today. As you can see, the state's really positioned us well to make sure that what's going in is accomplished with this low fixture consumption. If not, I'll move on to really some voluntary measures that are available to the public today. And that includes what I'll talk to first is I think you heard from Wesley Nix and others today about this washing machine disposal method. And really what that allows for citizens today by right, really with no permit required, they can go out and install these systems. Little pictorials there that demonstrate to you really how that works. It's really stubs out through the back wall through an inherent venting system and then down into the subsurface out to your irrigation. So I'm proud to tell you that my team is developing a handout now, and we hope to have it finished up in the next couple of weeks that really will demonstrate to the public, should they want to pull it off our website and come visit us in the office or what have you, we'll be able to hand those out for people just readily to go out and take advantage of this and install them today without any oversight. Moving on to the next slide here. Again, from a voluntary standpoint, gray water is readily available for the public. They can, with new construction or existing construction, can certainly install gray water systems. To define for you, I think I heard the conversation earlier, bathtubs, showers, bathroom wash basins or lavatories, clothes washers and laundry tubs are all permitted today in gray water systems. Commercial gray water systems include the same as residential, and they can actually even process through some of their processing and manufacturing effluent as long as it's treated before it goes out into the landscaping area. The thing I do want to point out, as I mentioned, while gray water is available for existing construction today, there are some proclivities that are there. As far as that, it's if you're on a slab, as you can imagine with the picture I have here, trying to get below an existing slab to add in a secondary drain system is, I won't say impossible, but it could be costly, and you could certainly have impediments in your way. Walls, electrical, existing plumbing, mechanical systems, and things that really would preclude you from getting below that surface. So raised floor systems and new construction is really the avenue of the future for gray water. Next slide. Yeah, and really the last thing Oh, excuse me. Any questions on the gray water or the availability of that today? Really, with the plumbing code and the green code allow that, through a permitted process today. So we'd be looking for citizens to come in voluntarily to take advantage of those. As far as potential enhancements, well, there are quite a variety of potential enhancements for your board to consider. If you want to mandate additional water conserving measures, whether that be on new construction or existing construction, whether that be to use recycled water, putting in lower flow or drip type irrigation systems to reduce the spray, or what we call the evapotranspiration. It's for our region, with the evaporation and transpiration is the off-gassing of the moisture into the air from trees and shrubs and grasses and foliage, is to put some percentages in there to restrict that. Just for you to consider, you could require lower flowing kitchen faucets, potable water reductions for landscape irrigation. You could require Energy Star dishwashing and clothes washing machines, irrigation controllers with moisture, rain, or weather station sensors, and your board could or may require gray water, recycled water piping for new construction. For non-residential, you could consider the same as residential, as I mentioned, as well as reducing water by 30, 35, or 40% above baseline levels that are established today. It could be a mandate that you could require for commercial establishments. You could also require waterless urinals, restoration of previously developed areas for native or non-invasive vegetation, in a sense taking out some of the high water consuming landscape and putting in lower consuming landscape, water consuming landscape as part of your mitigating measures. Elimination of potable water for landscape irrigation, or a requirement for recycled water for landscape irrigation. I hope you can see that today the current standards in place to ensure low flow fixtures are installed at the time of construction. In addition to these mandatory requirements, the public has a variety of options available to conserve water through voluntary measures, some requiring permits. Having said that, your board could consider mandating even more water conserving systems, as I just shared with you. Really, at that point, I'd be glad to answer any questions of building services, green code, plumbing code, or what we're doing today.
Any questions from the board? Doesn't look like there are. Any questions from the public? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim. Next, we'll hear from Michael Johnson, the Planning Director and Seizure Director. There's your final speaker.
Good morning. As you can see, we started out this discussion with ways that we can conserve water, and we're ending the discussion with ways that we can reuse water, which is really a resource that we need to take more advantage of. And one of the best ways we can take advantage of that is using reclaimed water from our water treatment plants. Currently, wastewater is transported to the water treatment plant, it's treated, and then it's discharged back into waterways. A couple of problems that are associated with that. You get turbidity of the water, and the water is typically at a warmer temperature, which can impact the fish that are in the creek corridors. And so if we can reuse some of that water as opposed to putting it back into the waterways, it will improve our situation with the creek corridors. Out in the western Placer County area, we are currently working with the city of Roseville to create a reclaimed water system program. We have some very big users out on the west side of the county that could take advantage of this program. The MRF is one, the Rio Bravo facility is another, where we could work with them to have them utilize reclaimed water so that it doesn't go back into the creeks. One of the biggest challenges is getting infrastructure in. While we're working with new developments to get it incorporated into new development projects out on the west side, we don't have a program for existing neighborhoods. And so that's something that the county staff and the city of Roseville are working on. How do we take advantage and get this back into our existing neighborhoods so that we have a source to use the reclaimed water? As we go forward with the Sunset Industrial Area, could be a great opportunity, could be a selling point to bring users in if we can provide the availability of reclaimed water for those areas. And lastly, I want to talk about the planning process. How do we implement our conservation measures? We have our large-scale projects out on the west side, and we have development agreements, and we have specific plans where we can incorporate and require the reutilization of reclaimed water. But we can also do it with small projects also through the implementation of conditions of approval. This is something that staff is starting to look at now. Is it reasonable? Is it appropriate to require smaller projects to incorporate reclaimed water systems into their projects? Something we're looking at, and we hope in the near future to have some information to bring back to you regarding that. The message that we're trying to convey is these issues can be incorporated countywide, and your staff is working very hard to assure that we have the highest utilization of reclaimed water here in the county. Any questions?
Not a question, Michael, but a comment. I know that as a result of our discussions and agreements with the city of Lincoln, that we have a certain percentage of anticipated water coming to us from SMD1 once that system is fully up and running. Have we considered talking to the city of Lincoln as to where we should direct that to, or where we should what's going to happen with that percentage of water that
we're in the process of starting those discussions because the Lincoln wastewater treatment plant is in proximity to the MRF. There's a great opportunity to take the county's share of that water and reutilize it at the MRF. So we're working with facility services. We're working with the city of Lincoln to find out how best to incorporate a program like that.
Yeah, because I know there's a purple pipe right across the street from the MRF.
Yes.
In that 400 acres that is part of the MRF's property. So, okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Board, for your participation in this. And, I would add that as PCWA, NID, and others come up with any changes, we will bring that back. Also, I know PCWA is working on where they are. They generally will know by May 1st what the water season will bring us as far as flows in the rivers and what the drought has done to our water supply. And they are continually updating those, and we'll have them back to present your board kind of where we are at some point between now and then.
Well, one final question. Is this packet, is this available online someplace, this presentation?
We can make it available wherever you'd like.
I see our news representative taking pictures of the
I can even email it to
the
anyone,
PowerPoint.
provided they have enough bandwidth. We can make it into a PDF and make it smaller.
Thanks, Brett, and thanks, rest. Oh, I'm sorry.
Supervisor Durant, I just want to make sure we don't list the third point on the purpose of today's, which is policy level discussion and direction from the board. I'm not quite ready to move on.
Okay.
I'm sorry, as always, I'm the painful one asking all the questions, but I
yeah,
think that's why people elected me. I really want to thank everyone who put the information together today, and I think it gives us a much better and more comprehensive picture of what we are doing. And I think a number of the departments brought forward what more could we do? And I think that's really the question that we as a board need to work on. What more can we do? I think slide number 24 from the Building Services Department asks some really good questions about what do we want to implement that right now are voluntary, but we may want to make mandatory as part of specific plans, as part of development agreements, as part of conditions of approval. And I'm not asking Tim to give an answer to these questions today. This is the board policy and discussion piece. What do we see as being important for continued development in Placer County that is achievable, is reasonable, but gets us to the question that brought us here today, which was from our planning commissioner, Wayne Nader, who wrote a letter to the Auburn Journal, wrote a letter to the Sacramento Bee, and said, how do I as a planning commissioner continue to approve new development when there are people in Placer County being asked to reduce by 20% or 50%? You know, and Wayne thought that that was a really legitimate question to ask. And Robert and I met with Wayne and had a little bit of a discussion with him, which was the genesis of this meeting today. And I think something that Michael brought up about, you know, is it reasonable? That's really the question that we need to struggle with. What's reasonable as new regulations that we do put on development? And I'd be interested in hearing, you know, maybe I'm the only one on the board who's struggling with that question and really trying to figure an answer out, but I'd love to hear any other ideas from any other board members on what you think is achievable and reasonable.
Well, you know, Supervisor, I think before we get to that next step, I think we need to do an evaluation of each individual piece of these different options to find out what, that's how we get there. I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse if we're going to try to decide that question right this second.
And I'm not suggesting we're deciding it. I'm suggesting that we actually discuss it at the board level rather than just hearing information. What did we hear today that we might want to respond to and say, please follow up on that? Maybe it's everything we heard.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest piece there is that, we need to more than just picking what's on these lists, we need to take a more in-depth view of what these things actually cost to implement. I know I've heard a lot of different discussion with the use of being I think a first step is the increased use of reclaimed water. That seems to be something that's extremely viable and something that we can actually do right this second that'll have an impact, immediate impact, as opposed to putting in something that the technology may cost more in the front end, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. Robert?
Yeah, so my 2 cents in that vein is one sort of specific. Well, first of all, I want to thank Brett for putting this all together and all the staff for their participation and bringing forward some good information for us to ponder as we move forward and weave our way through not only this drought, but really more of a perspective on long-term planning. So one thing, as a customer who, within the last 7 or 8 years did a significant remodel in the rural part of Placer County, I was frankly unaware of some of our gray water types of opportunities. And so I think some outreach and education, it seems to me like the contracting community would be the people, because with my guy, he was constantly telling me, Robert, you got to make a decision today. Do you want to consider these 5 or 25 or 50 things, which were all confusing? But I wasn't even aware of this option, but I certainly would have considered it. And I think I use that also to emphasize the fact that theoretically in the cities, in the urban areas, if we have 100% reuse of our reclaimed water from the wastewater treatment facilities, it substitutes the impact for the gray water. You don't need to do any gray water recapture if you're in an incorporated area or in any area that has treated wastewater if we're reclaiming all of our viable, reclaimable wastewater. Difference between the summer and winter uses, I know. So as it relates to some specific those specific opportunities for board policy and, focused more in the incorporated area. As you mentioned, Brett, we're not directly in the water business per se, but we certainly are a huge player in policy as it relates to the big picture. There's been a lot of discussion, and I certainly don't know the answers, but there have been a lot of discussion about should Folsom have been operated differently as it relates to its requirements for habitat values, and it sounds to me like it's at least a topic for a good discussion, that perhaps maybe it was not operated at its optimal, and that's coming from a fish guy. So I think we need to be a key player and a participant with NID, PCW, South Florida Water Agency, our city partners, and on a regional basis. For the Sacramento Water Forum, we have a good foundation by which to continue those communications, and it's my guess that all of the interests, water users, the development community, the environmental community, actually would more likely be more on the same page than not as it relates to finding some collaborative resolutions to all the things.
That's exactly the state of the situation right now. We are in alignment with all those groups are in alignment.
Good. So just keep us updated and let us know where we can plug in, and of course seek our input as it's necessary, both from a micro and a macro position, I guess.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Euler.
Yeah, perhaps in response to Jennifer's question about what are we prepared to do, but more globally looking at this issue. We're sitting here talking about the steps we as a county can take to conserve water, knowing that our primary source with our partners PCWA is the American River Watershed. Meeting with PCWA last week, they informed me a statistic I had no idea, and it kind of blew me away, quite frankly. And that is that in the totality of the American River watershed, 1/27 of the water that goes through the American River watershed, 1/27 is consumed by those people who have water rights to the American River watershed. 1/27. That's 3.7% of all the water that goes to the American River watershed is actually used by people. That means 96.3% of the water in that watershed just flows downstream for whatever purpose or just because gravity takes it there. 96.3% of all the water in that watershed just goes downstream. So even if every user in the American River watershed were able to conserve 20%, that's 0.74% of the totality of the water. 0.74%. So before I move forward with any votes that actually cost folks here in Placer County more money in development, more money in remodels, I want to know that we're getting the best bang for the buck with the other 96.3% of the water that's flowing downstream. I'm not satisfied that other agencies are doing what they should be doing to make sure that we are adequately managing that resource year in and year out, so that when we come to a situation like this, where in a year or a couple of years combined, we don't have as much flowing down, that we have properly managed that resource when we did have it. And I think from a bang for the buck standpoint, if we're not looking at storage, additional storage within the American River watershed, we're absolutely kidding ourselves that we will ever conserve our way out of this drought or future droughts. We as humans simply do not consume enough of that water for our conservation impacts to really make a difference long term.
Supervisor Holmes.
First of all, I want to thank you for the very comprehensive update about what our departments are doing and what they're planning on doing. I think part of our job as electeds who are out in the community is to take this information. When people ask us, what are we doing? We've got a very good program here in place that we can explain to our constituents what we're doing and what we plan to do, and that we are very concerned about the drought. And so again, thank you so much for the very comprehensive presentation from all of our departments.
And just to, Robert, did you have another comment? Okay, yeah, and just to conclude, you know, that the whole idea of policy, I think, especially when we're talking about what can we do, what should we do, that's all up to, you know, more analysis and as to what, you know, and that does include the piece that Supervisor Udler's talking about, is what exactly are we doing with the resource that we have right now, and is there something else that we can do a better job at? Conservation is kind of the end of the road for the resource, you know, and if we're not using that resource or protecting that resource, utilizing it, storing it, whatever, then I think all of this it doesn't maximize the value of that resource. So, you know, that's kind of where I am, is whatever information we can glean from this, and whatever we can do to encourage folks. I mean, I don't know if there's grant programs out there. I know that at one time in the city of Roseville, they were providing, you know, for some of these implementations, the new sprinkler heads and those kinds of things, they were providing a rebate for that.
They still do.
For these other kinds of things. I know I've changed all of my whole system. You know, it was very, you know, it cost $75, I think, to put the new heads on throughout the front and the back. But I did notice an increase in, or a decrease in my water bill, but at the same time, my plants looked the same. So anyway, thank you very much for the information.
Thank you all. We'll come back. Staff will come back as necessary with recommendations.
Great. Thank you. We will now move on to our ninth item of facility services capital improvements, job order contracting project number 9486.03, and that is Rob Unholtz.
Morning, Chairman Duran,
members of the board, Rob
Pull
Unholz.
your hair, Rob.
Capital improvements. What?
So you cut your hair off.
Capital improvements program manager with facility services. Before you today is an action requested to approve plans and specifications and authorize staff to solicit bids for job order contracting. Project number 9486.03 with an estimated probable construction cost of $2.2 million, including contingency and funded by current and future capital projects. In May 2013, your board awarded the bid for the current job order contracts and authorized the Director of Facility Services to execute job orders in amounts not to exceed $250,000. Projects exceeding $250,000 are presented to your board on an individual basis for approval. A wide variety of projects have been completed in the last year using job order contracting, including 2 fire station improvements, the sheriff's impound yard expansion, addition of a porch and the stairs at Forest Hill Memorial Hall, metal work at the South Placer Adult Correctional Facility, the remodel of Facility Services Utilities Building at the Government Center, and metal roof repairs at the Auburn Justice Center. This JOC program was initiated in 2010, so with this action today, we're moving into our 4th year of providing this as a project delivery method. JOC contracting is an indefinite quantity contract. The scope is for general construction, repair, remodel, and other repetitive tasks performed by facility services. The county will establish construction task catalog containing a series of construction tasks with preset unit prices. The CTC is developed by the Gordian Group using experienced labor and high-quality materials, and unit prices are based on local labor, material, equipment prices, including current prevailing wages. Similar to the previous process, contractors will be required to bid 3 sets of 2 adjustment factors applied to the unit prices in the CTC. The first set is for general construction throughout the county, excluding Forest Hill and east of Donner Summit. The second set is for those projects east of Donner Summit and in the Forest Hill area. And the third set is for secure facilities, for example, the adult corrections and juvenile detention facilities. Each set of adjustment factors will include normal working hours and hours outside of that. The price of an individual project will be determined by multiplying the unit prices by the quantity, or unit prices and quantities by the appropriate adjustment factor. The scope of work for these projects are determined by the county on an individual job order basis. The contractor will then develop a price proposal with appropriate task quantities and adjustment factor. Staff will review that, and if found to be reasonable, will issue a job order for the scope of work. The minimum contract amount is $50,000 for each contract. The contractor will receive an aggregate job orders totaling at least $50,000 during the contract term. The estimated maximum contract value is $1 million. The county does reserve the right to exercise an option to increase the maximum value to $4.1 million as currently authorized in the Public Contract Code. Upon your board's approval, plans and specs will be bid, and staff will return to your board at a later date with a recommendation to award to the 2 lowest responsive bidders for building improvement job order contracts. The estimated total of the total project is $2.2 million, including $2 million for construction and construction contingency, and $200,000 for project management, design, staff time, and project contingencies. There are sufficient funds appropriated in the capital project fund for these services. With that,
I would request your board's approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Yeah, Rob, I do have a comment. You know, I don't have a problem approving this, but I think it would be really helpful to have kind of an outline of an example of what projects might be on this particular list. You know, I think that would have kind of
for the upcoming term.
For the upcoming term, yeah, I think that would have given more context. I think for me to be able to justify, you know, a $2.2 million lift, and without, you know, getting into the bid or any of the descriptive terms, but just to kind of give us a flavor of what we were actually approving.
And at this point in the year, we can give you an idea of what some of those are. Certainly some do creep up during the course of the year, and we may or may not spend, depending on the project, the project workload, that total amount.
Yeah, I would have felt comfortable. I don't know if anybody else on the board feels the same way.
We'd be happy to provide that.
All right, if there's no questions, any questions from the public? I'll go ahead and bring that back to the board for a motion.
Second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposition? Any abstention? Great, the motion carries. We'll move on to our 10 and item 23 and item 25. They're both Health and Human Services. The first one, A, is Adult System of Care Joint Powers Authority Agreement State Hospital Bed Usage. Ms. Baumann.
Good morning. Good morning. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Maureen Baumann with the Adult System of Care. I have two items for you this morning. Both of them are good news for Placer County. In the first, I'm requesting that you approve 3 actions regarding the usage of state hospital beds necessary for state mandated services for specific persons with severe mental illness. I'm asking you to approve the identified participation agreement with the California Mental Health Services Authority from July 1st, 2013 to June 30th, 2017 in order to act jointly with other counties in contracting operational costs with the California Department of State Hospitals for access and use of state hospital beds, an amount not to exceed $11,000, which will include $5,840 of county general funds over a 3-year period. Secondly, to authorize the Director of Adult System of Care to sign this agreement as the approved designated representative on the CalMesa Board of Directors. And lastly, to authorize the Chair to sign the Memorandum of Understanding with the Department of State Hospitals that has been revised as a result of these negotiations. So just quickly, some background. This board has authorized Placer County to participate in the Joint Powers Agreement known as CalMesa since October 6, 2009. That's when that started. And I would like to let you know that that is now 52 counties strong, so it has grown since we participated, which is just what we wanted, and actually represents probably over 95% of the population of Placer County, so just a few small counties left. And then this board in May of 2013 agreed to expand the authority of the CalMesa Board beyond just the Mental Health Services Act to other mental health and behavioral health services when it made sense for counties to act jointly together. So this is an example of our taking advantage of that authority. You also approved an expenditure of up to $50,000 with that effort. And so this is an example of what I think will make the most amount of sense for Placer. The Department of State Hospitals has traditionally contracted with individual counties one at a time, and we've had trouble impacting the terms and rates for the utilization of state hospital beds. So this is going to allow counties to, and we've been concerned about the some of the terms of the conditions, but again, not had much impact one county at a time to be able to impact those. And so had to, had a contract with the state hospital when we had a couple of people that were of a nature that they needed that level of service. So in the effort of negotiating with the state, we have now been able to make some changes in that contract, I'm pleased to say, and the negotiations have resulted in mutual indemnification between the county and the state, which wasn't in previous contracts, no rate increase for 13-14, and also this group, the CalMesa, is looking at alternatives to state hospitals and considering maybe there's some private options out there that we haven't been able to, again, get to as a single county. So even though counties, the county use of state hospitals were down to 2 people, and that's about $450,000 each year, I would say we've already benefited in this year because if the 28% increase, which occurred in the last changeover in terms of year to year, was applied this year, it would have been more than $100,000. So keeping cost level sometimes really is an advantage. So with that, the fiscal impact, as I said, are fairly minimal. The current year is $1,634 of state funds and the same amount in county general funds. And then the next 2 years, which will be in our budget, are $4,206 for the next 2 years, again, state dollars and the same amount for county dollars. So I'd recommend approval, but would be happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions here, but I do have one. Did you say that you negotiated a mutual indemnification language?
That got added into the contract language.
And is that specific to bed usage, or what are there any limitations on that, or?
It has to do with the use of the beds, and so in the case of an incident related to a person that was getting services at the state hospital, that's usually where there would be some sort of an action, then that
Sure.
would be a mutually indemnification
Okay,
of both
no,
parties.
that's a good thing. I'll go ahead and ask the public, is there any questions, comments? I'll bring it back to the board. Great, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposition, any abstention? Thank you, and we'll move on to item B, and this is Mental Health Triage Grant Program and Contract Amendment with Advocates for Mentally Ill Housing.
Thank you. The second item is the result of Placer being successful in a competitive process to bring $2.5 million to Placer County and state resources in order to address the area of crisis services. As a result of this success, I'm asking you to take 3 actions necessary for the quick implementation of this grant, the Mental Health Triage Grant Program, April 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2017, for a total award of $2,509,346 with the Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission. The specific actions we are asking for today is to authorize the chair to sign the agreement and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to be able to sign subsequent amendments up to 10%, to approve the attached budget revision, which would allow the dollars to come into this year's budget, both expenditures and revenues, and thirdly, to approve a contract amendment with Advocates for Mentally Ill Housing to increase their contract by $20,000 at no county cost, for a revised contract of $314,800 to provide peer support for this grant program through June 30th of 2014.
Very good news. I don't see any, we do have a question?
Well, I
or
just want to comment, both of these items came before the Mental Health, Alcohol, and Drug Advisory Board and were approved. And I just want to take the opportunity that we are looking for new members for the Mental Health, Alcohol, Drug Advisory Board. So any of you that know anyone that wants to serve on a board, please contact Marie.
Is that a committee that's by district, or is that?
Yeah, it's supposed to have representatives from districts, and I think Banner Bay is the only one that doesn't have one. So anyhow,
Great.
When and often do they meet?
We meet the 4th Monday of the month. In the evening, a light dinner at 6, and the meeting starts at 6:15. Mostly in Auburn. 2 times a week, 2 times a year we meet in Roseville down at Kirby Hills.
Any questions from the public? No? We're going to bring this back and for a motion and a second, and this is a roll call vote because of the budget revision. So. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Holmes, Lycan, Bueller, Montgomery, Duran.
Yes. At this point in our meeting, I'm going to turn this over to our county counsel to take us into closed session.
The board will now adjourn to closed session to discuss with legal counsel one item of new existing litigation.
All righty. What do you think? 15 minutes? 10, 15 minutes?
Yes.
All right.
The board has returned from closed session where they discussed with legal counsel the new litigation by the Alliance for Protection of Auburn Community Environment. The board heard a report from counsel and gave direction to our office to take all appropriate actions to defend the county in that action. That concludes the closed session report.